Well, hello. Good morning, everyone. I am Lindsay Helm, the founder and CEO of Empower Employee, and we are connecting the military workforce with corporations who want to hire and retain military talent through our technology, education, and consulting platform. I know that it's been crazy and I've been traveling, and I'm really excited to bring on our next guest for today. I should mention that Mick was amazing. So, for those of you who are like, hey, we didn't hear from you last week, I was on at Military Influencer representing the company and everything that we do. But the reason you're here today is definitely not me. He definitely came to see our guests. So let me just give you a brief intro before I bring them up on screen. I have my notes over here. So let me make sure I don't, I want to get it all right. So I have Chris Jackson from T-Mobile. Chris served 8 years in the Marine Corps as a tank crewman with a 1 year combat deployment. He has celebrated 10 years, which is like basically longer than any commitment I've ever had with T-Mobile. And he started as a part-time seasonal employee and worked his way up to store manager, all the way up to now their military and diversity recruiting programs team lead, I believe, and he can correct me, helping veterans and military spouses find employment with T-Mobile. So, ladies and gentlemen, and people and humans, let's welcome to the stage my guest, Chris Jackson.
Hey,
Hey, thanks for joining us today. How are you doing today?
doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. I was all excited because, I did my hair for everyone and then went outside in Hawaii and it rained. So now I've got like,
Oh,
I've got
I
like,
did my hair too, but it didn't
yeah,
rain.
ready to
So
like make it good. Yeah. So let's get straight to it. Chris, I gave them a little bit of a snippet of like your bio, but could you tell the world who have maybe never met you before or don't know anything about you, who you are and what you do?
yeah. So again, I'm Chris Jackson. I'm a partnership manager on our military and diversity recruiting programs team. So what our team does is we lead the charge to help T-Mobile hit its commitment to hire 10,000 veterans and military spouse by next year. So we try to help recruiters keep their pipelines full with talent from those two communities so that when we do have openings, those two underrepresented groups will have plenty of representation in the pipeline. I work on a team. There's normally six of us. We're down to about three right now. So it's myself, my peer Lacey Craig, and my peer Tierney Brand.
And then for your team, when you talk about kind of military and diversity for T-Mobile, what does that really look like? Like, how do you define that for T-Mobile? Because you said you wanted to hire 10,000 veteran, you committed to 10,000. Like,
Mhm.
what's that ideally look like for you all?
Yeah, well, we have many partnerships, including potentially maybe one with Empower Hour, right, where we help source talent out of the communities that you represent. So we get to get a deep dive into some of the numbers of, I mentioned I'm on the military and diversity. So right now, military is
Nice.
our major, but we also work with diversity. So we get access to sensitive numbers and we can see what diversity looks like across different lines of business. And then we make suggestions for how we can pipeline talent into those lines of business. And again, a lot of that time it's us showing up at events so that our brand becomes recognized in groups that may not be used to our brand. A lot of people, when they think of T-Mobile, they just think of working in the retail store. So, a lot of that is a campaign to say, we are a Fortune 40 company. We have plenty of roles that are outside of retail, although that is our biggest line of business. And so it's really talking to people about the different roles that we have, making sure that people are aware of our brand, not just in terms of like T-Mobile. I run into people in the grocery store and they recognize the T on my chest, but in terms
Yeah.
of employment and what we have to offer. And like I said, just keep those pipelines full for our different lines of business.
So, what made you want to join, T-Mobile? Let's dig into your background. As a tanker, it's not very common, at least from what I heard, to get into kind of the tech and cellular wireless space. So, let's talk a little bit about your transition and kind of what made you want to be at T-Mobile versus other places.
Yeah, well, there is a phone in the tank. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we do kind of, but
Yeah,
that's not.
the radio,
No,
like,
yeah, exactly. My story is kind of an interesting one, I think. I I joined T-Mobile. I was in college at the time, and I was actually trying to get hired at Verizon, and they told me I didn't have the experience, but that I should go get hired at T-Mobile, which I was like, okay, that's cool. I thought it would be a quick job just to get some experience. But, at the time I was in the reserves. And so one of the first things that told me this company was different was the fact that I wasn't asked to use vacation time when I had to go do my service. I wasn't asked, well, do you have to go? Like your shift's really important. Some things that, we now know to be kind of illegal practices, but T-Mobile was the first company that really like made me feel valued as a veteran and the commitment that I still had to my company. I mean, to my country. And so, fast forward 2 years later, I remember my district manager, Lloyd, talked to me about, had I ever thought about being a leader within the company and a future with T-Mobile? And I hadn't. I was just a college kid. I was taking classes and partying. And so, that was kind of the beginning. That was the beginning of our employee resource group, the Veterans and Allies Network, which is now about 11,000 strong. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of a lot of conversations around not just how do we hire 10,000 veterans and military spouse, but how do we retain them as well, which I think is super important. Anyone can make a headline. We're going to hire 30,000 or whatever veterans, military spouse. But when the conversation starts to shift around how do we retain them, I think we're in the right area. And so that for me, that was the very beginning. I was fortunate enough to become aware of this team. I was tapped on the shoulder one day and asked to come and talk about my journey within T-Mobile as a veteran. And that's when I became aware of this military and diversity recruiting team. So after that event, I remember telling my old peer Meg Filer, I will be on this team. It's just a matter of when. And so I had to wait quite a few years for an opening to come up. But when it did, I was fortunate enough to be able to interview and get the job. And now I get to help my fellow veterans and military spouse as well find meaningful employment.
So when we talk about your transition, and it sounds like your boss Verizon kind of did you a typical Verizon forum. Shout out to Verizon because they do have an amazing military affairs team. Tommy Jones and team have it going on. Shameless plug. Don't come for me. But I mean, in a way, they did you a favor because they helped you get to where you are. But is there a specific mentor or person that helped you get to where you are today, or is there a resource that really helped you get, to your current position?
Yeah, I don't, I've had many mentors within the company. I don't know that they specifically steered me towards this role. They were more towards the previous roles that I had within retail. But without their support, I never would have been able to work these stretch assignments that I did work in order to really show the value that I could bring to the team. So, that was when I was working for Gary Price and Anna Cruz. They, in addition to my normal day to day job, they gave me the freedom to say, yes, I can attend this event and help and talk about what T-Mobile means to veterans, or yes, I can go on and do this speaking engagement. So, without that support, I definitely would not have been able to be here today.
Well, cool. So let's get to the good stuff. Like everybody came to hear about us, but what they really want to know is what projects is T-Mobile and what are you specifically working on? What job opportunities would you like to highlight? Are there remote opportunities? Like just tell us all the things.
Yeah, we'll start all the good stuff. So, as far as what we're working on right now, I think our biggest project is we have an internal push. We are going to have a very large hiring commitment nationwide over the next 6 to 8 months. So, just working with various partners to how do we advertise it and make sure that it's highlighted on military installations and some of the military radio stations and channels. We also we're working on an internal campaign. So we can draw in as many applicants, but we have to ensure that we have the hearts and minds of the hiring managers. When you're hiring for a sales position, it's easy to look at the resume, kind of like the resume I had when I was 18. I've shot this gun, I've shot this gun, I've done this martial arts, but it didn't. I didn't know how to create that, we'll say, effective resume at that time, right? So, how do you look past that? How do you ask the right questions to understand the soft skills that a lot of us bring to the table. So yeah, we may not have sales experience or customer service, but we have leadership. We're effective communicators. In terms of working nights, weekends, holidays, like we're used to that. That's okay. In terms of working well under pressure, we excel in that. So the sales and the customer service you can teach. The leadership, the effective communication, some of those other skills we bring, that can take a little bit more time. So it's really about getting them to see the value of that, and not just saying, oh, let me take this person because they've had a year of a sales experience. So we have that internal campaign that we're working on, that we're looking to launch over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. So, one of the services that I think you really hit it on the head kind of early on when you were talking about it. So, a lot of people, I think, in the beginning viewed our company as like staffing. this is not true. I mean, do we have a staffing arm? Yes. Do I love staffing? No. But do I like the impact that it has? Yes. So what we have done for companies like yourself and other companies, we talked about it, and I think it's great that you brought it up early on without a prompt from me, is we help create those internal ERGs, those white label training programs, so that you can take it and go. So it's really kind of super neat to hear that T-Mobile's focus isn't just about like, let's dump billions of dollars into, hiring, but like, let's bring the veteran and military spouse population and let's give them a home. Let's cultivate and give them job growth at, rates and not add to the underemployment issue that's currently out there for our military spouse and veteran talent. And having somebody be that internal champion and advocate is like the coolest thing that I've heard anybody say so far, that it's being built out and that you already kind of know. So I want to thank you so much for doing that. I'm going to move to the next question because you touched on it and I wanted your opinion. I have my opinion, but I wanted yours.
Okay.
We talked about resumes and customizing resumes. And, my resume, obviously, when I was 19, when I transitioned out, or 20, I was really young. I don't know how old I was. Look, doesn't look the same as it does today, because I had a mentor and I had another friend and veteran. I just made up my own word.
Veteran, I like that one.
Fredivan, I don't know what I said, but friend and veteran who, when I transitioned out, said, "Hey, girl, we have the same job. Let's write your resume to look like mine. I've already transitioned. I'm working at your dream job." She helped me do everything. But that being said, is there a nonprofit that you recommend to kind of get you started? Or like, we have an internal program here that I teach online, and we have resume templates that you can customize and kind of work with to help translate some of those skills. But
Mhm.
do you have a place that you send people that you really love that you have found to be super helpful?
Well, one of our biggest partners we work with is Hiring Our Heroes, and they offer tools in that realm. So, I'll generally guide people to them. Um, guide people to finding some kind of template on the internet. I found someone who works on resumes. I had to answer a ton of questions, and they put one together, and I have to say that's by far the best resume I've ever had in my life. But if you don't have the money to invest in that just yet, there are so many other avenues you can. I like to think there's probably one person in the military running around with this really nice master copy, and everyone else is just duplicating it and putting all their work in. But it's there's so many different ways. But yeah.
Yeah. So for us, we have, and we've talked about this, and I think Hiring Our Heroes does something similar, because I've seen it. They kind of have like a base template of like the recipe that works, right?
Mhm.
But then it's really encouraged to go in and customize that. And I've heard kind of some feedback that, oh, well, my resume looked really similar to so and so's resume. Did you have the same MOS? Did you have the same leadership thing? It's going to look kind of similar, but you may have served at, Fort Campbell, and this person may have been in Hawaii doing comms and radios while you were repairing computers. It's the same field. It's going to be really close. You may have managed, $1 million in equipment, and they managed a million people. Like, you have no
Right.
idea. So it's really taking that and customizing it. So
Yeah,
we
it's about
covered that, and I love Hiring Our Heroes. So, but what we really also want to know from you is, what is the best piece of advice you can give to military spouses and veterans who might be struggling?
yeah, don't give up. We live in what I like to call the golden era for veterans and military spouse right now. So many companies are invested in our communities. They see the value that we bring in the long-term sense. Um, they have teams like mine. I highly encourage you, whatever company you're applying for, Google and see if they have a military and diversity recruiting team. And if they do, connect with those people. I get LinkedIn requests all the time of people asking me to connect with them, look at their resumes, kind of talk about what we're looking for. And so those are tools and assets you have at your disposal. I would say a lot of these teams are kind of new, so people may not be quite as aware of us, but we are out here. We do engagements like this to kind of make our presence known. Um, Second piece of advice, lean on the experience of people like myself that might be in your circle who got out of the military, did the whole job hunt. I think it's kind of like parenting. You think you're the only person going through it, and then you talk to another parent. You're like, "Oh, your kid refuses to eat anything but chicken nuggets and French fries too." Wow, we're all going through it. So I think when you connect with other veterans and you find out the experience that they're going through, how hard it is, especially in the job market today, right? There's so many jobs, but it's still so hard to find a job. Just knowing that you're not going through it alone, that others have been successful, any experience they may have in navigating, all those things are useful. So yeah, don't give up and lead on the experience of others. I think those are some key tidbits.
Yeah, so you said you're not alone. And so since you kind of mentioned it, you said some of these teams are new and that you kind of do those informational, it sounds like more of an informational interview. So let's take a second. Let's talk about so I have a question in the chat that also refers to this. So I'm going to get these answered at the same time. So what is T-Mobile looking for in their upcoming roles? Like if you had, one role that you were focused on that was hot and ready, what are the key factors that you're looking for? If not, keywords on a resume, what are you looking for to get that referral to happen, that informational interview to happen, that conversation? Like what are the bare requirements and are some of them negotiable?
Yeah. So the role that we will be hiring for the most is going to be as a mobile associate in our retail stores. We're going to see such a massive hiring effort over the next 8 months. Um, I hesitate to kind of talk about that. I think coming out of the military, whether you're a veteran or military spouse, right? We generally have to start our careers over, and so if you have a specific skill set, technology, finance, right? I don't want to tell you to start over in a retail store, but I do like to talk about my experience. I was able to start as a mobile associate. I worked my way up to store manager because the military had already instilled in me some of those soft skills I talked about: leadership, effective communicator,
Yeah.
problem solver, right? I quickly stood out. I was promoted exceptionally fast. And then that opened up the door for me to say, hey, what do I want to do next? I could have, when you're being promoted internally, you may not necessarily have a say marketing degree, but maybe you've been doing stretch assignments with the market, and you show them that, hey, you're a quick learner, and all these other skill sets that make you, potentially a valuable future member of their team. So but yeah, retail is where we're doing the massive hiring experience. Customer service is always great, but I think more so the problem solving, the working under stress, the typical things that, maybe when you're in a retail store you see the employees having to deal with. Can you get yelled at and remain calm, right? I got yelled at every day in the military that I had to remain calm. I'm sure, Lindsay, you remember that life. So uh,
Shame, shame.
I think things like that are important. I'm glad that we kind of talked about the resume, right? We're in a time where resumes are submitted electronically. Maybe the company then asks you to duplicate your work and type all your work experience. And so you kind of lose the edge of like, oh, well, my resume stands out against this person's resume. So my advice is always follow up and bug that manager. If you're applying to the store around the corner from you, I'm going to call you every 2 days. Hey, this is Chris again. I'm calling. I submitted. I applied online. I just want to know if you've started scheduling resumes. I really can't wait to show you what a valuable member of your team that I could be. Right. I think that's an easier way to stand out than a resume that they may pay attention to. They may not. They may just look at quick skill sets, experience. Okay, I'm not sure, right? But I think when you really start reaching out and you show them you're a person behind that application, that really helps. That was something I always appreciated when I was a store manager. The people that called me and bugged me, that second phone call, I said, okay, Lindsay, God, you've been bugging me. Can you come in Thursday at 2 o'clock?
Yeah, I'll make time. And I'm that kid that used to bug the living daylights out of leadership. And so one of the best compliments that I just got at Military Influencer, my husband got the compliment, but it was about me. So I'm going to take it as I am the most pleasantly persistent person and entrepreneur that anybody has ever seen. That I will ask you, I will wait, you'll give me a no, and then I'll come back and say, okay, you said no, but this is why you said no, so I fixed it. Are we good now? Can we move forward? Like, and that is the same kind of feedback that I would give any kind of job seeker or candidate. I agree with you. If you're in an interview and they give you a no and you're able to get feedback, some companies don't give you feedback, and
Right.
I feel neutrally on that regardless. But if you do get that feedback and it's a no, and they say, well, we really don't feel like you have the right experience, for this role. Okay, cool. What experience do I have that you can find? Or where can we dig in? Can we do another interview on a different position? What did you like about, what you heard? What didn't you like? Go back and ask for that. And I wholeheartedly ask. So one of the questions in the chat was, where do we go to apply for these roles? And I think we're going to pop it up on the screen, but we have the tmobile.com. There we go. And then this is how to get in contact with Chris, his LinkedIn. But you go to tmobile.com. There we
Slash
go.
careers.
Slash responsibility slash community slash military slash careers. And then I am not going to tell them to do this, but typically what I do is I will go look at the job rec that I am interested in, their position on, in this case, T-Mobile's website. And if it asks for customer service and a bachelor's degree and 10 years of experience in tech, man, I'm going to look at that resume and I'm going to write it to match that, verbatim. And then I'm going to apply. And then after I apply, I'm going to go to LinkedIn and I'm going to search T-Mobile recruiting team. And then I'm going to go find every legitimate T-Mobile recruiter I can find and say, hey, my name is Lindsay. I applied to rec number 123456 today. Here's my email. This is how much money I am wanting to make. This is my availability. Like I laid out for you. P.S. Here's a link to my calendar so you can schedule an interview, or I'm happy to use yours. Looking forward to hearing back from you. PPPS, if you are the wrong person and you're not running this rec, could you please tag the person that is? PPPS. Thanks, hugs. Thanks. And typically what I would get back would be, hey, Lindsay, you're right. I'm not the right person, but this is the right person. I'd be happy to introduce you. Thank you for giving us all this information, because my job is to make your life easier. In my humble opinion, I'm showing you customer service ahead of time by laying it out for you. This is my plan. This is what I need from you. And some people just aren't that comfortable, but I've learned upfront, and they'll be like, well, that's outside of our salary range. Do you still want an interview? Yeah, I do. There are other ways to be compensated. Like, it just
Right.
depends. So I really appreciate that you kind of gave that feedback. So we talked about the best way to get in contact with you, but just to confirm, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place to start off to get contact. From there, I'll generally transition things to my email, which is just christian.jackson136@t-mobile.com. But you touched on something I really want to talk on. How can
Yeah.
I help anyone who may reach out? And so, generally, the way that we can help best is if you reach out and say, "Hey, Chris, I was on the website. I found this job. I actually went ahead and applied. Is there any way that you can help me?" So, any given rec that we have may have 200 to 300 people that apply. Again, we're in a time where there's a lot of jobs, but there's even more job seekers. So there are a lot of people that apply. And what I do is I connect with those recruiters and I say, "Hey, we had Lindsay apply to rec, 34856 or whatever. Can you please make sure she at least gets screened?" Um, and generally that helps you at least get that screened in that interview. From there, it's on you. But we do have you have to work against the mass amount of people that are applying to every role, and you have to work against applicant tracking systems, which can sometimes you get that automatic rejection letter. You're like, man, that was so fast. I just applied. A lot of times those ATS systems do just send an auto rejection. But when you reach out to me and I reach out to our recruiting team, we can always reverse that and get that interview for you so that you can show that you're the right fit.
Man, I could talk about ATSs all day and talk about what I built here at Empower Employee. Actually, I will just talk about this for a second, then I'll ask you your last question. So, I think people demonize applicant tracking systems when they're intended to be a tool for recruiting teams to make the right choices, which is another challenge, right, for the veteran and military spouse population. But um, we built a non-ATS system that is swipe left, swipe right on candidates based on that human connection. Because you mentioned that earlier, like we really want to meet the human and evaluate the human, not necessarily what's on paper. And the feedback has been kind of phenomenal. We did it in that way. So that is a online community with a course on how to hire and retain talent, with a course on how to talk to recruiters, with a course on all these resumes, like all this information in like one place. And so my goal someday will be to have at least one recruiter from every Fortune $5 million company in there using it. And because it's not an ATS, you're able to directly connect and chat with recruiters who have already been certified as, military friendly. And then as a recruiter, you're able to push that talent straight into your ATS so they're incoming. So you and I are on the same page on like how to do that. But
Save wavelength.
really excited to it's built. I just haven't, and we're testing. I just haven't invited like a million people in there, but that's going to happen really soon. So everything that you're talking about just validates for me that the technology solution and the education that we're building is phenomenal. On the closing note of that, do not hate an ATS. It's there to help. And just like he said, if you get that rejection, you're like, darn it, reach out anyway. That's an automated system. And I've been told no for positions that I knew I was qualified for. It just happened to like not like me and then end up getting the job anyway. So
Hmm.
this is our last question of the session before we go. It's really hard too, like
Okay,
super hard. Ready? Brace yourself.
I'm ready.
I'm out of answers to this question. So for me, we always ask every single one of our guests, what was your favorite duty station and why?
Oh, okay. So I don't think I got to go to some great duty stations. I did 29 Palms, which anyone who's been there probably is still drinking from that. Um,
I mean, I went to
mm,
Fort Irwin. I compared that to 29 Palms and I loved Irwin. So, okay. So maybe not 29
yeah,
Palms.
did
What else?
not deliver to maybe probably Camp Pendleton. Because I was tanks. There's not many stations that we can go to. You have to be able to safely fire in case there's an accident and the main gun is max elevated. You want to ensure that it won't hit civilian population in any direction. So we generally have very specific bases that we can be on. So I think
Gotcha.
Pendleton might have been my favorite just because I could go to the beach after, and I love the beach.
Do you? Yeah. Well, so everyone knows that I live in Hawaii now. We do go to
Yeah.
the beach quite a bit. So I'm like, I do like it here. I think if I could come up, me personally, with like a future duty station, I'm really excited about the possibility. If you're watching this, you know the Army changes everything. So please don't hold me to this. This could change tomorrow. I'm excited about the possibility of maybe going back to like the DC area or to San Antonio, Texas, both of which have an amazing military support system for everything that we're doing and will be a great jumping off point for my husband because we are getting close to his retirement, which I cannot.
Woo.
I know. By close, I mean like I think it's like 4 or 6 more years. I stopped counting. But anyway, so all of
Time goes
that. And
fast.
then
Time goes fast.
yeah, ultimately, I want to retire in San Diego so we can be by the beach. And I just have some amazing. Oh, Mindy said, "Yay, Texas!" Don't hold your breath, lady. But go to San Diego. I'm kidding. I know her in real life. She's great, so she probably laughed. But she's at I think in El Paso, Texas, where I helped build a medical facility, and she worked with me as a network engineer. So shameless plug, Mindy may be looking, but I don't want to out her, so I don't really know. But T-Mobile would be lucky to have her as a network engineer if she's interested. So that covers kind of all of the questions today. You know, we've talked about what T-Mobile is doing. We're really excited. I don't see any other major questions. I'm going to give people 2 seconds in the chat. So, but what we'll do, Chris, is we'll thank you so much for joining us and tell everyone that in 2 weeks, we will be bringing, I believe it's Intuit back to talk about their bookkeeping and training program. And if you'd like to learn more about Empower Employee, please reach out to me on LinkedIn or send me a message, and we'll continue to showcase our education and technology solutions. Thank you, T-Mobile and Chris, for everything you're doing for our military community. They're really lucky. We're really lucky to have somebody like you advocating in the space.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.